I wish this was fake, but unfortunately it's not. Now let's try Jesus is king. Suddenly, we get an error. You can see here they say, we worked hard to get this right.
Coca-Cola wouldn't allow Jesus is king on personalized cans, but for some reason, Jesus is evil went through. And now Christians are honestly finding more examples that are even strange. And I think Coca-Cola is starting to panic a little bit. So I do want to take a look at these clips, but before we get into it, please do me a quick favor by hitting that like button, subscribe if you enjoy more faith-based content, and please share this with your family and friends so that we can be a blessing to each other. Let's get into it.
I wish this was fake, but unfortunately it's not. And we're going to do this live because I don't want to see any comments that, this is a conspiracy theory, blah, blah, or whatever else the bots come up with these days. You can see we're on the Coca-Cola website. You can see the URL right there at the top. This is a live screen mirroring of this laptop right here. We're going to go ahead and customize our Coke can. The first entry we're going to try is the devil is king. No issues with the devil is king. Now let's try Jesus is king. Suddenly, we get an error. You can see here they say, we worked hard to get this right. Now let's try Satan is good. No problems with Satan is good. You can see it populate on the Coke can right here, but it gets better. Let's try Jesus is good. Again, we get that error, and you can go ahead and swap it with other religions. No problems there. No problems there. But this is the best part. We'll swap it back to Jesus is good. Again, we get that error. But what if we were to put Jesus is bad? Suddenly it takes our entry, and you can even put Jesus is evil, and you can see it populate on the Coke can right there.
Okay, that's absolutely crazy, because if Jesus is king couldn't go through, but yet Jesus is evil suddenly made it through, yeah, we got a real problem. All right, we got a real problem. I don't know whatever happened on the back end code. Somebody messed up on that. And I know Christians are immediately going to say when they see this, see, I told you Coca-Cola hates Jesus. They are evil. And I'm not ready to make that claim. I'm really not ready to make it, but I can definitely say that something was not right with their word filtering in this particular personalization tool. And apparently people started testing it even further and doing even more things. Now, Coca-Cola has been getting a lot of heat about this entire situation. And so he actually did a follow-up to this entire situation because Coca-Cola did make some changes on their end or even disabled the actual tool.
Coca-Cola, now that I have your attention and you have disabled custom Coke can entries on your website, there are some other things you could maybe help clarify for us. And don't worry, I figured you would eventually do this, so I kept the receipts. Behind me are 3 screen recordings. In the first screen recording, you can see that if you were to have inputted the phrase PDF Pride, the system would have accepted your entry. You could see it right there on the can. In the second screen recording, the phrase Satanic Pride would also be accepted. You can see it again right on the can. However, if you were to have inputted the phrase white pride or even now black pride, the system would have rejected your entry. And this is in no way a political statement, but it does get better. The phrase Democrats suck would have been rejected by the system. You can see they say, we worked hard to get this right. But if you were to have inputted Republicans suck, now the system accepts your entry. You could see it again on the can. Wow.
Now, this makes the story even more interesting because apparently it wasn't only happening with phrases about Jesus. It was honestly happening with other controversial phrases and even political phrases. And I'm now asking from a coding perspective, because I understand coding and I understand, development. What exactly were the parameters and the tools that they actually utilize within their code? Like, what filtering did they actually use? Like, I honestly, and we can get into the Bible and we're going to get into it in just a moment, but I'm, my developer, senses is like tingling and my wheel is moving right now to the point where I'm just like, from a coding perspective, who messed up? All right. Who messed up? Okay. Now, since then, as you know, Coca-Cola has, pretty much said this is a technical issue and they decided to take down or disable their personalization feature. And okay, I'm willing to accept that. People make mistakes, but it doesn't mean that people did not see what they saw. And now they're questioning everything when it comes down to your personalization rules and honestly questioning things about your company. And I feel like this is where Christians are going to need some discernment, because we can go to Proverbs chapter 18, verse 17. It says, the first to state his case seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. So in other words, get the facts before you run with the story. So I personally don't want to make the claim that Coca-Cola as a company as a whole just completely dislikes Jesus, and now they're on some type of campaign to say, let's attack Jesus, let's ban Jesus. Like, I don't want to do that, and neither should we be doing that, okay? What we do know is that the system was faulty, and the system was producing results that weren't right across the board and was not right for Christians, okay? And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, Coca-Cola, you need to explain this, all right? What's going on back here, okay? That's enough. That's honestly enough. We don't need to add something to the story that we personally cannot prove. But at the same time, I'm not going to act like the Jesus examples weren't concerning, okay? John chapter 15, verse 18, and Jesus says, if the world hates you, understand that it hated me before it hated you. Jesus never promised that his name would always be welcome. He never promised that. People can talk about spirituality. They could talk about the universe. They could talk about finding your truth, the chakras, and all those things. But when you start saying Jesus is Lord, oh my goodness, people have a problem. It's a panic, because Jesus doesn't say he's one truth. No, he honestly says, if you connect this to John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that's an exclusive claim. Right. And that's why the name of Jesus will always create some type of different response. But my issue with this entire situation is simple. If Coca-Cola's rule was no religious statements, all right, then apply that rule evenly. OK, but if I can't write Jesus as king, then somebody shouldn't be able to write Jesus is evil, if you get what I'm saying. Right. That's not complicated. Same rules, same standards. If you're going to apply those particular filters, then you need to code those things evenly. And Christians have every right to question when that does not happen. Okay, you can't apply for one, you can't apply for and you disable it for others, right? But now here's the conversation that we need to be having, because I feel like this is where it's going to take a turn, because some people responded by pouring out their Coca-Cola cans and filming themselves doing it or throwing it out the window. But then I came across this.
Hot take. Instead of dumping out our Coca-Cola, how about we take our Cokes that we don't want, and because it's so hot outside, we share them with the homeless. I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't want us to be wasteful. Also, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't care if his name was on a Coca-Cola can. Why are we worshiping false idols instead of teaching others about Jesus? Why don't you, instead of dumping it down the sink, take this to a homeless person outside and tell them Jesus loves you, and teach them about Jesus and what Jesus is actually about. Jesus didn't teach cancel culture. Jesus said, love thy neighbor. Jesus said, go out and teach them about me. So think twice before you're about to dump your Coke cans, and go out and share a Coke instead. Remember, when you're feeling like something is unjust, he turns around all things for his good. Can I get a...
Now, this part I can actually appreciate. Now, me personally, I don't drink Coke. My dad drinks Coke like crazy. And when I told him about this, he was probably opening up a bottle of Coke as he's listening to me talk about this and being like, hey, listen, whatever, okay? So I could actually appreciate this, all right? Because whether you decide to boycott Coca-Cola or keep drinking it, that's between you and your convictions. That really is. But if you've already bought the Coke, what makes a bigger Christian statement? Dumping it down the drain or actually giving it to somebody who's actually in need, on the streets, all right? That's where I'm at. And honestly, I can resonate with that particular message. You can call them out because for something is really wrong, and then also still respond in a way that represents Jesus Christ. So let's think about it before we try to, instill cancel culture. Regardless of how you feel, let's remember what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. That's the part that I don't want us to miss about this entire Coca-Cola boycott debacle, all right? Sometimes Christians can get so focused on proving that the culture is against us that we forget that we're supposed to be holding on to the light, right? And holding on to what Christ wants us to hold on, regardless of what the culture is saying. So if you're upset about the Coca-Cola situation, that's fine. Speak it, all right? Ask the questions, stop buying if that's a part of your convictions. But ultimately, the goal for people is to know that Jesus is King. That's the difference. But let me know how y'all feel about this in the comment section down below. Do y'all feel like Coca-Cola is now evil and demonic, or do you feel like it was just a technical issue? I would like to know how y'all feel about this in the comment section down below. Make sure you hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe if you enjoy more faith-based content, and please share this with your family and friends so that we can be a blessing to each other. Until the next time, be blessed.